Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Virginia Living Museum live stream. My name's Britt and I'm one of the aquarists here at the Living Museum. And for our afternoon live stream today, we're going to be giving some enrichment to our blue crab. So the blue crab is an animal that I am sure many of you guys are very familiar with. They're very beloved in the fisheries community. People love to eat them, love to fish for them. But they are also just a really cool cultural icon as well. Many of you who have driven through Maryland or are from Maryland may know that it is the state crustacean because, of course, states found a way to make a crustacean their state animal. And they are all over the place along the Chesapeake Bay. They are found anywhere on the west coast of the Atlantic Ocean, so that's the east coast of the United States, as well as the Gulf of Mexico and a little bit of South America. That's where they are native to, but they are actually found all over the world now. They've been introduced across the world because people really love them. They're very tasty. They're cooked into a lot of different forms. Many of you guys may have had crab cakes, she crab soup, any of that kind of delicious stuff. And so today, for our enrichment for our crab, we are going to be giving him a pickleball enrichment. So this is an item that is basically just a pickleball like you would play like any game with, but it is modified. We've put this fishing line string here, which is attached to a little zip tie that we can hold on to. And there is a little weight. It may be a little hard to see in this light, but there's a little weight that keeps the ball down as this ball normally floats. So this is kind of just a fun enrichment tool for them. And we're gonna put some food into it today. So today I'm gonna be stuffing it with some chunks of oyster. So this squishy meat right here, another food that we as people do enjoy eating. So I'm gonna put a couple of pieces in there for him. And I'm gonna pass this off to our camera woman and I'm gonna take the camera from her. So we apologize if things are a little shaky for a moment. And she is gonna run back and give it to our crab and you'll get to see him interact with it. All right, so in the meantime, I will talk a little bit about our crab. So I've been calling him a he, and this is an animal that we can easily tell the difference between males and females. So we know that our crab is a male, and the way we can tell is because on his underside and his underbelly, he has an apron that is shaped a little bit like the Washington Monument. So some of you guys may already know the difference between the males and females and how to tell. The males, their apron is shaped like the Washington Monument, whereas the females are actually shaped like the Capitol building. So it's some little bit of Virginia, or excuse me, American stuff going on. All right, so she's just put the pickleball in and he's taking his time to figure out what it is. We did reorganize some stuff in his tank earlier today, so it may take him a moment to realize that that's not what we're doing anymore. And you can see him kind of flipping upside down. He's really excited. This is typically how he interacts with some of his enrichment items. He puts on a little excited display and then he goes over and interacts with it. So Patricia is holding up the ball and you can see him fluttering those swimmerettes, which are his back two flippers right there. Those are his back legs, and they are modified into what's called swimmerettes, and those are used to swim, as the name suggests. And his front two legs, as you can see, are modified into very large claws that are very sharp. And there you can see that he has that little Washington Monument shaped apron down there. So the female's is much rounder, and I actually have a photo of it right here. So there's the female. Her apron is very wide and round, and then the male is very short. And the reason the female has that wide apron is because she carries her eggs in that apron. So it'll open up and then she'll have a bunch of eggs in there. It looks a lot like fish eggs, like roe. And she'll carry those for a while until they are ready to hatch. And you can see he's gotten a piece of food out of that pickleball. There's one more piece in there, but he's chewing on this one for right now. And you can see all of his moving mouth parts. They're very, very quick, very fast, too fast for us to see sometimes. And what he's doing is just kind of shredding that into pieces while holding on to it with his big claws. And the claws are a very, very tasty part. Let's see. All right, so we've got some questions now. Let me see. We've got, how long do blue crabs live and how big can they get? Those are both great questions. They can live to be about 3 years old, and our blue crab is about 2 years old. So he's got another year ahead of him, and he's got many, many molts ahead of him as well. And the next question was, how big can they get? Blue crabs can get to be about 9 inches wide on the carapace, which is the main part of his body. So you can see where his eyes are, and there's little points coming off to the side. So like right there's a point, and right there is a point kind of sticking off to the right side. But his legs aren't included in that, so he's actually a little bit bigger. And Presley wants to know if he is always a brown color. So our blue crab doesn't actually look super blue. Typically, depending on where they live, they have different algae growing on them. So in this tank, he's got a very, very thin reddish brown layer of algae growing on his body. But when there isn't any algae on them, they are kind of a more bluish green color. So that's their more natural color. But some of you who have eaten blue crabs may know that the crabs that you eat, even if they're called blue crabs, they're typically a different color. And that's because they change color when you cook them. So Tyler would like to know what makes the crab blue, and I'm just gonna get to that. That's an excellent, excellent question. And the reason for that, the reason that blue crabs are blue or get their blue coloration is from these two pigments that are in their exoskeleton, which is their hard shell on the outside of their body. And the two pigments that they have are crustacyanin and what is it called? Astaxanthin. Yeah, there we go. And astaxanthin is a kind of a red pigment. He's kind of showing off right now. So astaxanthin is the red pigment, and crustacyanin is a blue pigment. And when they are alive, the crustacyanin kind of overpowers the astaxanthin. And when they are dead and cooked, the crustacyanin is actually cooked off, and the red really comes through from the astaxanthin. All right, does he have a name, and if so, what is his name? So he does have a name. His name is Eugene, which I think is a very appropriate name for him. I think it suits him. And Lucas would like to know, will it hurt the crab if you take the algae off? So we won't take the algae off of him because that would require us scrubbing him, and he's not really a fan of human interaction. Most crabs and most crustaceans would prefer to just be left alone. And it doesn't hurt him to have that algae on him. It actually helps him camouflage in the wild, or in his case, in amongst all these rocks right here. And Camden wants to know, what's the biggest thing he eats? And that's a great question, because he could eat really anything. He could eat a whale during a whale fall if he wanted to. They will eat just about any food that they can come across. So they'll eat some larger deceased animals, such as the whale fall that I mentioned. He'd gladly go in there and pull off some meat. But he typically likes really anything. He'll eat algae, he'll eat vegetation, he'll eat oysters like we've put in his toy today. He'll eat any kind of shellfish he can get, lots of other fish. If he can grab a fish that's swimming by, he gladly will. So he will really take advantage of any possible food. And August would like to know if they need oxygen, and yes, they do. All aquatic animals, whether they're mammals or fish or invertebrates, they do need oxygen, but they absorb their oxygen from the water itself instead of through the air like we do. Let's see. All right, let's see another question. Graham wants to know if blue crabs dig holes to hide in the sand. Yes, they do. So one of his pastimes is actually digging holes in his exhibit. So I just rearranged some stuff in this exhibit to kind of make it look a little bit nicer. But within a day, he's gonna move a bunch of stuff around and dig some holes and probably bury himself. And he really loves to bury himself right around there in the front, and then in that little dip towards the back with those oyster shells in that grass. He loves that spot. Let's see. All right, from Anna, do they live in cold or warm waters? They can live in both. So they are found all the way up to Massachusetts and maybe a little bit further now, and all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. So they can live just about anywhere. And they are not endangered. So they're doing quite well now. They used to be a little bit more threatened, maybe not quite threatened phase, but people used to overfish them quite a bit, and so there are now stricter regulations on fishing for these crabs, and that's done a good job. Their population is starting to come back a little bit. From Cody, he wants to know if the crab can swim. Yes, he can absolutely swim, but he prefers to walk or run across the sand. And Ryan just asked how fast they can run. I don't know the answer to that, but they are very, very quick, and they kind of do a combination of running and swimming at the same time sometimes. Oh boy, Silas would like to know how many babies a blue crab can have at a time. That is a large question. They can have hundreds of babies at one time. They actually hatch out of the eggs and then just kind of go off into the water, and there'll be hundreds and hundreds of little larval crabs. Most of them will not make it. That's why they have so many, because the mom crab does not actually take care of the babies. They hatch and then they just go. All right, Taylor, nice of you to join in. Taylor just asked, how old is he? He's about 2 years old, and he'll live to be about 3. Jack wants to know, can more than one blue crab be kept together or with other animals? Typically, we don't keep them together. Blue crabs are a very aggressive species, and they will eat just about anything they can get their hands on. And they're really strong, and they have very sharp claws, so they do tend to pinch other animals and try to eat them. So we keep them typically separate. Sometimes other very small crabs will be in with them, but typically we try to keep it to just one. All right. Do you have any more questions at the moment? You can see he's not as happy to see the tongs in here. He's pretty receptive to his enrichment items, but those tongs that were just holding that food, they're a little bit more of a sign that we're going to be messing with some things in their exhibit, and he's not a big fan of them. All right, Ivy, who wants to know how big their babies are. They're very tiny. They are nearly microscopic. They're like plankton size. They're very, very, very small. Really difficult for us to see with the naked eye. All right, and so some of you guys who may have gone crab fishing on your own or be familiar with crabs may know the nicknames for males and female crabs. So the females are called sooks, especially when they have a bunch of eggs in their pouch. And the males are called jimmies. So if you've ever heard someone calling a crab a jimmy, it's a boy crab. And if it's a sook, it's a girl crab. Tiana wants to know, can other shells attach to the top of their shell? Yes, technically they can. They are not like hermit crabs in that they don't live inside of a shell that they find somewhere out in the water. But small shells like slipper shells and barnacles and things like that can attach to their shell. However, every time they molt, those shells also fall off with the molt. So every time they kind of get bigger, they have a fresh new shell on the outside. Melissa wants to know, is it possible for blue crabs to live past 3 years? I'm sure it is. It's very rare though. They typically only make it to about 3 years, even in captivity. And they go to what's called a terminal molt, which is their very last molt before they die. And he hasn't quite gotten to that point yet. So he's got a little bit of time. He's 2 years old now, so he's still got some time on him. All right, guys, do we have any more last minute questions before we wrap this up for today? Any more? Nope. All right. Well, we thank you very much for tuning in for another live stream here at the Living Museum. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope that the weather is nice wherever you are and you can spend some time outside today. Lorelei has a last minute question. How do you know when he is in terminal molt? You typically don't, but afterwards they start getting more tired and kind of acting like an old man. And August wants to know if the babies have shells when they hatch. That's a great question. They have a very soft shell, and they don't actually look like blue crabs. So I recommend actually going online and looking up baby blue crab or larval blue crab, and you can see what they look like. It's very different from what actual grown blue crabs look like. So it's pretty cool. All right, well, thank you guys so much. And join us at 11 a.m. tomorrow when we'll be feeding the seahorses at our seahorse exhibit. And be sure to visit us virtually with all of our natural education here at the Living Museum. We're on Facebook, also on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and we're even on TikTok now. And there's always complete updated information on our website, which is thevlm.org. That's THEVLM.org. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.